Howdy, and welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio. Once again, we're having another part of the Glagg saga. This will be number 3. And last time, if you recall, we talked about how after he had met Glagg initially, he was worried about him. He was trying to get in better communication skills worked up with him. They were playing Sasquatch soccer, and a bunch of other stuff happened, including some close calls, and his brother's actually trailing him, following up to where he was meeting with Glagg, and pretty alarming. So he's apparently, at this point, decided that something needs to be done about that. But before we get on to that, let's catch up with the rest of the stuff that happened.
Well, how rural it was is, there would be deer come down right through the middle of town on their way to the river when it was in the middle of winter.
Right.
There's deer tracks in the snow through the front yard. So it's not like, Dallas, Texas. This is, right in the middle of town. You've got, in any direction, maybe a mile and a half, 2 miles, and you can be back into the thick of it.
Yeah, and as far as animals wandering into human settlements, I've got 5 deer that live in my backyard every winter, so it's, and I'm, a good mile into town here probably. There's deer all over the place here. So for something that's that stealthy and they can move fast, going a few blocks into some little town in the middle of the night is not going to be even really much of a challenge.
Yep, and anybody...
Anyway,
everybody else.
I know I'm just kind of like making a mountain out of a molehill here, but the point I'm trying to get at is maybe it wasn't the smell of your brothers. Maybe he had actually seen them before and recognized them.
Yeah, well, like I said, now knowing what I know now, that wouldn't surprise me. But back then is when I didn't, it was, I wondered what did he recognize on why he was,
right,
excited that they were there. That could totally be what it is. Knowing what I know now, I wouldn't surprise me one bit if he had been there.
It could be their scent too. It could be either one. I'm not trying to steer you into deciding that's what caused it or anything. But knowing how stealthy and sneaky they are, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Like you're his only companionship, and you keep leaving all the time, and it would not surprise me if he trailed you back at some point to see where it was you were living.
Yeah. And that's why I say, it wouldn't surprise me one bit. It's something I never thought of back then. But the reason I went up as much as I could is I didn't want him to be alone. But now knowing, how far they can move and how far they will travel in a night, him coming to town to watch me in town is nothing. Even though it'd take me from where he was at, that first year on my bike, it'd take me a little over an hour to get there. It probably took him a quarter of that time to get back to town.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever thought about this, but when you left him to go back to town, he might have been sitting there on the edge of town waiting for you to get there.
Or the reason he always was right there waiting for me is he saw me coming through town and run up to the spot.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have to follow the road. He could cut, cross country and make it up there quicker.
Yeah, they're all terrain. Closest stuff don't even stop them. They go over anything.
Yep. I hadn't thought of it. It's just now when you said that, it's like it doesn't surprise me one bit if he did. But I had never thought of that back then, and I don't know why I hadn't. Well, I just hadn't thought about it until now.
Yeah.
But
and the other thing is with some of these encounters and stuff, when you share them with somebody else, they'll have insights into it that maybe you never thought of, which gives you some more insight into the whole experience that you had. And, maybe right, maybe wrong, but at least it gives you a chance to think about it a little bit differently and go, wow, let me consider this possibility. And I've had that, with my encounters where I was telling some part of it to somebody and they came up with something and I just went, whoa, I never even thought about that possibility. That's really cool.
Well, and that's what I heard, people's stories of encounters of, being 20, 25 miles away and have one of these things follow them home. And up until just now, I had never thought of that. In my instance, I just always assumed that, that when we'd made the plan for me to go back, that he was right there waiting.
Like not only possible, but probable. I mean, you're his best friend. You're the only thing he's got to interact with, and you're taking off. Well, gee, I want to go see where my best friend's going. And he knows where you're coming from.
I just wonder if, there's that could it opens up a whole world of possibilities that I had never thought about. But
my way of thinking, it'd be kind of weird if he didn't try to follow you at some point and see where you were going.
Thinking about it just now, it would be. But, that, again, that gets back to where I was still a kid. But what he'd see is me go home and endure what I endured at home and then working. And then, did he watch me go to school? Did he watch me work? Did he see all of that with his own eyes? And then when I got up there, and when I got up there is when I was the happiest. I mean, that makes it even that much more powerful to me if he did, and which, in all probability, he did.
Well, curious, smart, stealthy, and nothing but time to go sneak around in. So
he doesn't have a schedule. He doesn't have to be to school. He doesn't have a summer vacation.
He hasn't got a job.
And the other, it brings up the other thing about moving him was, there's that, I told you there's a couple of times in the beginning, it was all around the same time, about the end of the first year, when it looked like he'd just been beat up. And when I'd asked, try to get him to, try to find out what happened, and he just didn't really want to talk about it. And I think it was the other ones that were in the general area that didn't like the fact that him and I were buddies. That's what I thought back then. And it was all of that combined. And when my brothers went up, and it was after that time that it just looked like he'd been in a tussle, more than just us wrestling around in the trees. It just concerned me because he just didn't even want to really not talk, but, it didn't want to deal with what had happened to him. What had came across was, what my brothers always did to me is what was happening to him. And see, I'd never thought about that as, what the impression that I got from what little bit of communication we had about why he looked like he'd been roughed up a bit was, my brothers did that kind of stuff to me, and it was kind of the impression that I got was the same thing happened to him that time. And that's when I seriously started thinking about moving him away from there. And then all the problems of, okay, where do I go that he's not going to run into, the bullies that are, going to rough him up like that, for me being around and finding a good place that's away from, the humans that are going to bother him. And then that's what also me wanting to teach him how to defend himself. That's another thing. That's the human side, and me being a kid, wanting to teach him how to fight like a human, not understanding that if me and him were to get in a fight, there wouldn't be anything.
He wouldn't need to know how to fight to massacre a human. He can just go plink with his middle finger and you're done.
Yeah. But teaching him how to punch like, I had learned how to punch. I think I'd told you, I don't think I've said on the air, but I'd been in martial arts for a long time because of, the way my brothers had treated me. So I started trying to teach him. It sounds funny trying to.
Well, wait, let's back up a little bit now. When did you become aware that there was another troop of Bigfoot in this area?
It was all around, that's what I'm getting at, is all around the same time as when I saw him look like he had been roughed up, is when I realized that there was more.
Bigfoot, and that he didn't just, have a fight with a mountain lion or a bear or something like that.
Yeah, well, I didn't know what had happened, but I had asked him, was it a mountain lion? Was it an animal? Another animal? Was it and he just, it's kind of hard to explain. He just didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to explain it, and it wasn't like it didn't see like claw marks like from a bear or a mountain lion.
Right.
No gore marks from a deer, antlers or anything. It just looked like, spots of hair had been ripped out, and just looked, parts of his skin were darker than the other, which I took as bruises.
Uh-huh.
And that's when I asked, was it some of your people that did this? Was it other people like you that did this to you? And he just wanted to build a fire and eat. It's all he kept doing that night was he just wanted to eat and forget about it. And that's where the lack of communication, I never actually knew exactly what happened, but that's what I thought, and that made a lot of sense to me in the fact that, whenever I'd go to sleep when I was up in there, and I realized that he wasn't really sleeping, he was just watching,
mm-hmm.
or, protecting, that's when I told you that's when it, made our bond even more so, because when I went to sleep, he'd make sure that I was protected. He watched over me when I was asleep, and I'm starting to get choked up again.
Wow.
Sorry.
So how long had you been doing martial arts then? How young were you when you started learning that?
I think I was 10, 9 or 10 when I started. So I was already.
You're pretty good already. Yeah, you're pretty good by the time you run into Glagg.
Well, I had to be. I had 4 older brothers that I needed to defend myself against, and my instructor understood that also, and he helped out with that aspect of it. Sorry about that. That's just, there's some of it that when it comes back, it just brings back that flood of emotions to you.
Yeah. No problem, buddy. What style of martial arts did you learn anyway?
Yeah, I learned Aikido, art of self-defense.
Well, Aikido doesn't have a whole lot of punches and kicks in it. That's mostly tossing things around, so you would think that'd be pretty ideal for something like a Sasquatch. It's big enough to, like, Aikido throw an elephant.
Yep. Using somebody else's massive size against them. Yeah.
Yep.
And so, and somebody trying to hurt you, turning it around on them. So it was interesting. It was hilarious.
How the hell did you teach him stuff like this? How'd you get across to him that you were trying to teach him how to defend himself?
He was my buddy. It's one of them things. In that situation, it seemed natural, but trying to explain to you how I got it across that we were going to, I told him, you don't ever let I said, you don't ever, back down from anybody. If somebody wants to hurt you, you hurt them back. Which, thinking about it now, that's, like I said, I was a kid. Seeing my buddy get his butt whooped, I didn't want that to happen, and knew what it felt like to get my butt kicked, and I wanted to teach him how to defend himself. Knowing what I know now, all I did was probably make him more. He had the tools already, just giving how to.
The instruction manual. Go ahead.
Yep.
Give it to him.
Well, I know how to grasp the concept of a clenched fist and throwing a punch. That's something that I did teach him, is how to throw an actual punch instead of a hammer fist, which was terrifying, the amount of power that he could get in a swing.
Well, how did you show him that a punch was better than a hammer fist? How did you get that
across
to him?
On, what was it? I think it was a bunch of pine boughs first, and then, set them up, tied them together with a bunch of twine, and then, did a hammer fist, and then did a punch, but then held out his hand and, gently popped him, did a hammer fist in the palm of his hand, and then did it with some, did a closed fist with the knuckles, not hard, not enough to hurt, but said,
well,
and then,
as if you could hurt him anyway, seriously, come on.
But I knew the strength that was behind there and didn't want him,
I know you didn't want to shock him or something.
Yeah, but then show him, and then, I'd do kata and show him that, how I would throw a punch, and he started mimicking, when I do kata, that's, your exercises, your horse, and then, would show instead of, beating something down with a hammer fist, throw a punch, and a punch produces more power.
But did he notice a difference?
How do I explain what was going through my head even? Here I am trying to teach.
Well, just think of explain what his reaction was. Start with you got him to hold his hand up and you hammer fist it and then you punch it. Did he notice a difference?
Oh, yeah, the look of shock in the open in his eyes. I mean, when he looked up at me, he looked me in the eyes like, that was instant when you noticed it like that, and that just barely touching, barely punching, you can feel the difference in, the thud and then the snap or the crack of hitting with the knuckles.
And that was the aha moment.
Yeah,
this is worth learning.
It didn't, he didn't need words. You could see in his eyes, and the look is like, holy cow, that's, there's night and day difference, even though, maybe, 15, 20% punch and a 45% hammer fist, and the punch is, you can feel it in the palm of your hand, how much more power it had, how much more it hurt.
Yeah.
And then, we always shadow box, not at each other, but, I'd show him uppercut, and it sounds so goofy, but to me at the time,
it's like I'm trying to picture Karate Kid out in the woods teaching Bigfoot. And the thing is that their bodies are built a little bit different than ours. So I'm trying to imagine him doing, like, my God, if one of those things punches you, it'd be even way worse than being hit by a human the same size and strength. Because their arms are longer.
Yeah. Well, and then, when you throw a punch, you put your body weight into it. Can you imagine? Now he knows how to punch and make it hurt. If another Bigfoot come up, I wanted him to be able to hurt it and not get his butt kicked. I wanted him to be able to be, now I know I'm teaching him how to beat an alpha male, if it ever came to that. But he was my buddy. That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
I didn't think of it then. I just wanted him to be able to defend himself the best way he could, which, with his his innate or his natural ability and his natural strength, he can defend himself pretty well. But
yeah, well,
I wanted him to have an advantage. It's a combination of three things. It's mass, strength, and speed. And he's got all three. And now you're giving him the technique. Like, he could crush a Mack truck with a punch. It's ridiculous, dude. Yeah. Well, I know that now. I didn't know. I wanted him.
I know you weren't thinking of that when you were like 16 teaching him that. But let me just say in retrospect, shame. Shame on you. Shame. And also, that's awesome.
Well, and then, I told you, it's jumping ahead a little bit, but, with somebody, about what has been heard up there, the human words that he can say, but when you're mad at somebody and you tell them...
This would be probably a good time to mention this, that somebody else may have actually run into him.
Yes, because I don't want to say what I taught him, because it's not bad, but it's bad when if somebody out there squatching, hunting for Bigfoot, figures out that there's something there and like tracking it and stuff, and I told him to what is the word? Taught him to say screw you, but not screw you.
Fire truck.
Yes. vacuum. Vacuum the rug.
Yeah. But anyway, the audience has got it, so.
And that has been heard within the last 3 or 4 years. Now, just imagine if I was in the woods right now, knowing what I know, that would still terrify me if I was to hear that come out of the woods at me.
Yeah, especially considering how deep and loud their voice is. What is there? Is there like a dragon over there that's mad at me? I'm leaving the state now. I'm done. That's it. I'm out of here.
Oh, mercy. It's perfect, though. I mean, that's exactly what I wanted, was him to be able to scare people away, so they'd stay away from him and leave him alone.
Well, I would imagine if he's still around, he's probably the alpha of whatever troop that he's hanging around with. But
I hope so.
That's that kind of trading and that kind of feeding. Yeah, I don't know if a standard Squatch can be able to outfight something like that.
Well, like I said last show, that first couple of years, we fumbled our way through and somehow made it. All the, what you're supposed to do and not supposed to do, I messed up every way possible with him, but it was a different situation than almost 100% of encounters. Mine was, I encountered a young one that didn't have mama or daddy.
Right.
Over there in the trees, protecting him. A totally 100% unique situation.
Yeah.
And if you choose not to believe it anymore, I don't care. But hopefully the people that if you believe me, maybe you can get something out of it. And if anything, it's like with people, what I want people to get from it is there's good ones and there's bad ones. And they're all not, they
ain't all the same. They're just like humans. Some of them are nice, some of them are mean.
Yeah. And
it
now,
doesn't matter if you're an Indian human or a black human or a white human or an Asian human. Some of them are nice, some of them are mean.
Yeah. And some of them, pray to God, you never meet. But they don't all, they're not all monsters.
Right.
Even there's a very, what's the word? I mean, they're family-oriented.
Yeah.
Just because they're not, a white family or a black family or a brown family like us, they're a hairy family. But they're still a family. There's still a mother and a father and children. The fact that humans are a conundrum, humans horrify them. I think, there's the squabbles over food and stuff, but still, as a family unit or as a whole, I think they treat each other better than humans treat each other.
Well, from what I understand, they don't murder each other and stuff, although they'll have wars with other troops. But
yes.
they have, better.
There's
better
no
behavior
cold-blooded murder.
No, that's what we hear anyway. We'll wait until we find out something different. But from everything that I've heard, they don't do that. If they're the closest they'll come to something like that is if one of them's given away their position and can't be stopped, or one of them so critically wounded they ain't going to survive it, they'll just kill it. But that's more like mercy killing than it is.
Survival of the family or the group is more important than the
individual. Yeah.
And I was going to just comment on something that I heard Kat say, but
go ahead.
It's what I'm trying to think of. Well, the lying thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even a concept that they grasp, and look at how bad humans lie about everything.
Yeah.
With them, that's not even anything that they can conceive of. It's not even in their thought process. A lie is just totally foreign to them. Wouldn't it be nice if humans didn't lie?
Yeah. Yep. Yipper. Yeah, that's for sure. And the more powerful they are, the more they lie all the time. Liars.
Well, I hope that this one answered a few more questions. That wasn't super exciting, but It's just stuff.
Well, you got to get all the basic details in. It's not like we're looking for a super exciting story here. We want to hear what actually happened with your encounters with this guy and all the time they're spending.
If folks have anything they want to know specifically, that would, I can try to answer, specific questions. Hopefully that.
Just throw her in the comments, folks. So it was kind of like after the first year is when you ended up moving him elsewhere?
Yeah, deeper into the backcountry, because he was, fairly close to town when, I first met him, and for that first year, that's where we always met was, not that far from town, and then that's when I wanted to move him farther away, and that was an adventure in and of itself.
Oh, yeah. How many times did you have to go? How the heck did you manage to pick a spot where you figured, obviously you can look at where they're going to be pulling licenses to go hunting and then go, okay, this area there's not going to be any hunters and generally there's no backpackers here. But then how do you know that there's not some rival troop there that he's going to have to deal with?
That's where I kind of relied on him. Would
he go with you when you went
general
on these
direction
missions
and have him scout?
Oh, so he went with you when you did these recon missions?
Yeah. Well, he actually went when I'd suggest, a spot, would go up on top of the mountain and I'd point to an area and, because there's that creek that runs down through there. Look, there's a meadow there. There's, that outcropping of rocks that looks like that might be a good spot. You want to check that out. And when I come back on this day, we can go look at it together. And that got into some pretty exciting times. The stuff that people might find interesting that went on in those adventures.
Well, we'll tell that in the next part of the story where you and Glagg are running around looking for a new place to move him to. Yep. Getting further away from the annoying humans and apparently unfriendly Sasquatch troop that was in that area.
Yep. And that's the thing that, back then as a kid, is I got the impression they didn't want him being friends with me, hanging around with me, as a kid would say. But yet they wouldn't take him. I think they rejected him when he was, when that happened to his mother and father. But now that he's getting older and he's friends with me, now they don't want him to be friends with me. It's like,
Well, you can tell how that wouldn't fly very well with him. It's like, you're not giving me any options here. I've only got one friend, and you want to take that friend away from me, and you're not allowing me to be part of your troop. Screw you guys.
Yep. And that's why I wanted him, I was trying to move him away from everything.
Yeah.
Away from them, away from humans, anything that could hurt him, because like I told you just 30 minutes ago, I'd never thought about, that maybe he'd come to town to follow me and watch me. But then now I realize that when I moved him farther in, it wasn't I was getting him away from the troop that wouldn't accept him. I'm putting him into a totally different troop's area. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that then.
Yeah,
that gets into that.
It's in the area he was in. It sounds like they weren't going to take him anyway, so it didn't really matter if he was moved to another place, and there was at least a flip of the coin whether they'd ever accept him or not. It sounded like the other ones weren't gonna.
Yep, and I was just trying to find a spot that was free of other Sasquatch, and not realizing that they're everywhere.
Yeah.
I just moved him into a different troop, and it was a gamble. Now I know it was a gamble as whether or not he's going to survive there, but I think because he was a tough SOB is why he was able to stay where we moved him to.
Well, probably, at that point, he's out there by himself, solo Sasquatch, still like a teenager or something.
Or that one event that happened, that can be in the next one that happened after we moved.
Right. Well, next time we'll get everybody up to date about all your adventures and trying to find a place to move to. God, that must have taken a while. I'm sure it was more than one try.
Yeah.
But, fun at least. It's like, me and my friend Sasquatch will go over here and explore this area, and I'll feel very confident and safe while we're doing it.
that gets back into how we fumbled our way through all of that. Just every mistake you could make, I made, but somehow we got through it. Man. And anybody, if there's anything that specific they want to know, ask they can post in the comments, and next time you can tell me what they want to know, if there's something specific they want me to hit on.
By all means, and everybody's listening to this, if you got questions, go ahead, post them in the comment section, and I'll make sure that he hears about it. Okay, well, are we pretty much covered that first year up to the point where you're getting ready to move them then? Was there anything else that we missed?
Not that I can think of at the moment. You give me something else to contemplate about, what we talked about tonight. I had never thought of that.
Well, I'll give you something to think about over the next couple of weeks. I know it's like sometimes that stuff just hits you. It's like somebody that had an experience, and they go and they look online and get all this information on Bigfoot, and then they start going, oh my God, I may have actually been around these things a bunch of times and just not even realized it because I didn't know what was going on around me, what I was seeing, what I was hearing, smelling, etc. And then they get really freaked out. It's the same kind of thing. You can all of a sudden connect up the dots and go, whoa, this could have been what's going on, and I never even thought about that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The man that makes it makes no sense if he didn't.
Yeah,
and that just brings up something that I had never even crossed my mind, and it's like, holy cow, that man, there's so much that.
Yeah, and you got to figure with these guys, they are like the king of fast and sneaky and mobility. And he can go cross country, 15 minutes. He's sitting down by town waiting for you to come riding in another half hour.
Yep. That's what I'm getting at. Is I never even crossed my mind, and now knowing what I know, it's pretty much a guaranteed that he did. I just never even thought about it.
And again, that. I almost lean more toward it was the Smellier brothers that brought him out, but if he never got a close look at, he may have followed you back to where you live or something at that point and never really seen any interaction between you and your brothers. And that was the first time he actually saw the interaction and went, whoa, they're not friendly. What's up with that?
Yep.
He may have actually recognized him but didn't really know how you guys interacted, or it may be just like you were thinking that he just smelled them. But, I would think the chances would be really high that at some point he followed you back at least close to where it is that you live to see where it was. Because, even a human that was in that position would want to do that.
Yeah, but make the situation reverse, I'd want to.
Yeah, you'd want to figure out where your friend was living that had a family that kept coming and visiting you. Yeah, trying to help you. You go, well, where are they coming from? And I can't go to. I need to go. I'm going to go find out. And it's not like Bigfoot are curious or anything.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like they wear their daytime soaps.
Yeah, we're their nighttime show. Let's go watch the Johnson family dinner before we go hunting. Oh, I love that show. Let's go. Oh, my God. Well, it's always fun talking about stuff like this because, again, even with your long experience and interaction with this guy, things like this can come up that you never even thought about, and then it can help you, put other pieces of the puzzle together and go, oh, maybe that's what was going on, sort of thing, And, a lot of the stuff that I've learned about Bigfoot has been just this way, talking to people that have had experiences with them and getting their information on what happened in their situation, and then you start seeing the same kind of information popping up over and over and over again that starts looking like there's a pretty good case for fill in the blank is what's happening here, because it seems to be happening all the time,
Yep.
But yeah, that's, that stuff is all, it's very interesting, and it's just fascinating to have people that are willing to come forward that have had interaction with these things come forward and talk about it. really?
It's still, you know, hard for me to talk about. There's still that, you know, I'm glad I'm doing it. It helps, but, you know, what am I trying to get at? It's still difficult to talk about. You know, first off, you know, there's always back in the back of your mind, you know, you can say you don't care what people think, but everybody does.
Yeah.
But that's why I told you thanks for what the people like you do that give, you know, the people like me an outlet to come and say what I've seen, what I've witnessed, what I've been through. It helps so much to talk about it.
I know. I don't think people that haven't been there can really appreciate just how important that is, because I had my encounter for 40 years before I even told anybody about it, and it was like a huge weight was lifted off me. As soon as I could tell somebody that didn't ridicule me, that was a huge relief.
Exactly, and that was the reason why I kept it in for so long, is because of being afraid of, you know, turning into the town drunk.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was really, you know, sort of like terrible timing for you, too, to have that fresh in your mind about what happened to the town drunk, and then have this experience and go, oh, God, I don't want to be the town drunk. What do I do?
Exactly, and that's always, you know, in the back of my mind. Is that going to happen? You know, that's what I, you know, when I said, you know, it's so refreshing that the general consensus has changed. You know, it's not instantly you say that you've seen a Sasquatch or even that you believe in them, and you're not just ridiculed relentlessly by everybody like it was, you know, in the 70s and 80s.
Oh, God, back then you couldn't tell anybody anything about Bigfoot, or you'd just be run out of town on a flaming rail and tarred and feathered and thrown in a ditch.
Yep.
And that was if you're in the Pacific Northwest. You better not really say anything about it if you're outside that area. You know,
Yep.
At least you were in Idaho, where they, like, you could maybe get somebody to believe there was such a thing as Bigfoot. But, like, I was in northern Minnesota. Dude, there's no Bigfoot there. No, what are you talking about? You're crazy. No, those things aren't around here. That's over there in Roger Patterson land over California or something, isn't it? No, that's where that stuff's happening. There's no Bigfoot around here. And so there was, like, you know, some of these people you hear from the deep south that lived out in the hollers and the hills and stuff, and, well, Grandpappy knew the boogers were around, and my dad knew about them, too, and my uncle told me about them, and you know what? Nobody around where I live knew dick about these things. Nobody talked about them. Nobody shared their stories with me. Nobody said anything about them. So I'm really glad that you guys down south had people to tell you about this, because we didn't have nothing up north. We had to figure it out on our own or get eaten.
Yep. Well, you know, it was known about. It just might not have been talked about. You know, the boogeyman.
Yeah. No, it wasn't known about there at all. The only people that had any idea that it existed were the natives, and they don't talk about it. Yeah. None of the northern European transplants that lived there or were born there knew anything about it.
Well, more towards the south, like the boogerman. Boogerman's going to get
that's down in the south, though. That was 1,500 miles from where I was.
Yeah,
I know that was going on up there. I was up in the tundra, man. I was up by the Canadian border.
Yep.
And, yeah, they knew all about the Wendigo up there if you happened to be a native. And other than that, they weren't telling the white man anything about it.
Yep.
You just get eaten by Wendigo, stupid white man. Ha, ha, ha.
If they warn you about them, then you don't get eaten by it.
Yeah, well, yeah, see, there you go. But, you know, yeah, northern Minnesota, very dangerous. Definitely Bigfoot there. I've heard dogman sightings. I've seen Wendigo there. There's cryptids there. Well, it's a huge area, 30,000 lakes, and in between there's swamps and forests. There are some areas like where the Minnesota Iceman supposedly was shot was up in the Whiteface. Well, the Whiteface is surrounded by a swamp. You have to use a swamp buggy to even get there. The only time you can get there is during the winter, otherwise when it's frozen. And, you know, and this is what the areas are like. And like, oh, there couldn't be any Bigfoot. You can't even get in there. How do you know what's in there? Shut up.
Exactly. I am just
and that was the
so
same place
glad
that
that
ran into mine. It was the middle of nowhere. The only time you could get there in the winter, when everything was frozen. During the spring, summer, and fall, you literally could not get to where we went to. So, yeah, you know, it's like there was just no recognition of this sort of thing being anything like remotely related to possibly existing back in those days. And even if you were on the Pacific coast, you know, and out in the area where at least some of the natives and locals and stuff knew about Bigfoot, if you talked to like anybody in a even mid-sized town or anything about Bigfoot, you were still crazy.
Yep.
So
that's what I mentioned last time also, is I guarantee you that probably half the people, you know, within 100 miles of my hometown had some type of encounter, but were too afraid to say anything about it. I guarantee it, I wasn't the only one in the town. Drunk wasn't the only one that had ever seen one up there.
No. I got another guest coming on from Libby, which isn't that far away from here. It's up in northern Montana.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of a similar setup there. You know, they got a little town. It's a logging town, da-da-da-da-da. And everybody up there pretty much knows Bigfoot is real. They just won't talk about it to outsiders, which is another weird twist on the same thing. So, yeah, you know, just because you don't hear anything coming out of these little towns doesn't mean that there's nothing going on. It just means that they're not telling you about it. That's what it really means. All right, well, we got a few questions from the fans to ask you here, or the listeners. They want to know a few different things that you didn't touch on yet. And, of course, some of these things may be in upcoming parts of the story. If that's okay, you know, don't worry about it. If it is, go ahead, answer the question. You can go over it again later on anyway. And one of the odder questions was, what color was the inside of his mouth?
Kind of light gray to pinkish, not like the inside of ours, meaning humans, but not as dark as his skin.
Okay. Was his tongue that color too, or just the inside of his mouth? Yeah,
it was all about the same color.
Okay. Well, a couple.
That is kind of odd and something I didn't ever think about, but
yeah, that's not a question I was expecting either, and it's not one that. Well, you know, nobody ever really mentions that part of it. Even if they see the thing, yell at him or something. It's like, who's actually close enough to look inside of his mouth?
Very good question, though.
Yeah. Now, another one that I have that occurred to me is you were saying that you found him a cave to stay in, and when you'd go take a nap there, you were under the impression that he probably wasn't sleeping. He was probably keeping a lookout all night long. Did he ever, like, make himself like a Sasquatch-type nest in there? Did he have anything else that he had drug in the cave? Was there, like, really any, you know, evidence that he was using it when you weren't there?
Yes. After, like I said, I thought that's where he had already been staying, and there was pine boughs and sticks and branches and all sorts of stuff piled in there, and kind of like a little tunnel that you had to crawl through to get in there. You had to get down to get through the entrance back into the little opening back there. But then there was not like your typical structure, because it was in a cave, and it wasn't a huge deep cave. It was just more like a recess down in the rocks. Mm-hmm. But he had, there was pine boughs and stuff in there in the bottom that it already looked like he had been kind of nesting, for lack of a better term. But then the moving blankets is what would put down over top of that, and it always, it acted like a windbreak, and just looked like a bunch of brush. He kind of had that built during
at the entrance there with all that brush in it would be a windbreak, plus it would help hide it too, so that was pretty clever.
Exactly, and that's something he had already done, but it had always looked like it had been freshened up, when stuff would start getting old and dried out, new fresher stuff would get piled in front of it.
And it was just mostly all like pine boughs and stuff is what he was using for it?
Yeah, well, because of sagebrush and stuff like that, you got to remember this is a pine forest, no deciduous trees at all.
Right.
And if you didn't know where it was, you could probably walk right by it and never know that it recessed back in there as far as it did. And that was hidden pretty good.
Yep. Yeah, I can definitely see the positive aspects of hiding the entrance to your little hidey hole.
Yeah.
Well, the other question that comes up then, did you ever actually see him sleep?
very good question. And, you know, I don't think I ever did, ever. I rested a bunch, but I think it was so exciting when I was there that he wanted to, man, he'd tucker me out. He wanted to be up and doing something all the time. And that's what I said when go down in there and rest, and I'd fall asleep. I don't think he ever did. I don't think, you know, like I said, excellent question. I don't think I ever saw him actually sleep.
It doesn't surprise me. He was probably worried about you and trying to make sure that you were safe the whole time you were out there with him. And that may have been because he was aware of some other threats that were around the area, which is kind of disconcerting.
And that is, now that I'm older and know what I know, that actually scares the crap out of me. But I realized that was probably going on. At the time, thank goodness I didn't, because if I would have thought about that and worried about that back then, yeah, I don't know how good it would have went. But
it would have been Panic City. I don't know if you would have been out there that much.
Yep. And that gets into something that we'll talk about in a different episode other than tonight. But what you just touched on, and we talked about off the air before, that I'll get into in one of the next episodes that gets into that.
Yep, another cliffhanger, guys. Sorry, got to deal with it. So another thing that comes up here is, you said when you first ran into him, he was sort of depleted the local area of bunny rabbits and easy to catch small game and stuff like that. Did you ever get to see him hunt and catch anything?
No, but I got to see after he had caught some. Quite a bit.
You never got to actually see him hunting, but yeah, he would come in with some game occasionally or something.
Yes. As he started getting older later on, yeah, I didn't have to provide for him anymore.
You know, one question that came up is, was he happy to see you when you showed up, or did it just become like, oh yeah, Kevin's here again? And I already answered that one for you and went, no, he was like super thrilled every time Kevin showed up.
Every single time it was like Christmas Day. Every single time, and which was made me want to go up there even more because of the enthusiasm and how excited he was to see me, and vice versa, how excited I was to get up there and get away and be with my buddy.
Right on. I could see that, definitely. That makes sense to me. Now, by the time you guys, had spent, like, let's say, I know this is going to be probably hard for you to remember, but at the end of the first year that you'd been interacting with him, how many words in English did he actually know that he could, like, say to you?
Oh, mercy. Quite a few.
So, ballpark it. 20 words, 50 words, 100 words, 200 words?
75 to 100.
Okay, so that's pretty good for 1 year. So he not only understood a lot of words, but there was a smattering of English words that he could speak to and knew what they meant.
Yeah, he tried to say motorcycle all the time, but that one too many syllables. He said bike pretty good. I said, it's just my bike. Just call it my bike. And motorcycle, fire. He had more than just words, like simple phrases, like, me do it. Whenever he'd want to try something, me do it. Because I'd always say, do you want to do it?
And then you get all excited, me do it.
Yep, exactly. And I remember the more excited he got, and the more excited he got, the faster he'd start talking. It's like, Glagg, slow down. To
the point where you couldn't understand what the hell he was saying.
Yep.
Another interesting question here that came up is, did you ever have, I know this is with limited language, it would have been almost really, really tough to do this, but did you ever have like any kind of philosophical discussion with him? Did you ever mention God or anything like that?
I saw that in one of the comments, and yes, as odd as that sounds, I was raised religious, and I would pray a bunch, and he would never had like a discussion about it, but whenever I'd pray, he'd always do the exact same thing I did. And he'd always, how do I explain that? the reverence that I showed for my Creator, he did too. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Did you like teach him how to pray or anything like that, or did he have like his own way of doing things?
It was never something that we like discussed. It's just when I'd pray, it's like he already knew what I was doing, if that makes sense. That, you know, whenever I'd say a prayer over a meal, which, you know, I tried to do it. I still try to do it every time. And it's something I've done my whole life. I hope that's making sense. It's like he knew what I was doing. And,
didn't that strike you as kind of odd, though, that you could, like, pray and here's this forest guy kid that still seemed to know what you were doing?
Well, that's what always made me think that he wasn't an animal.
Yeah.
He was...
Well, there's atheist humans, though, too.
Yeah, yes. But see, that, again, is where me being so young also, it's not something I pondered on. I have thought about that as I got older. But back then, it was just, that's kind of cool, you know. And
what would you do when you pray? Would you like bow to your head and just pray silently, or fold your hands and pray out loud, or how are you doing it?
Yeah, I just say a quick prayer. Dear Lord, thanks for this food that we're about to receive. Help it to, you know. But it was always out loud. I just bow my head and bless the food real quick. And a lot of times I'd say a prayer before bed. And it, you know, like I said, it's not something that was ever discussed. It's just like he understood what I was doing.
Yeah, again, that's just like, you know, kind of, you know, nobody really touches on the spiritual aspect of Bigfoot, and I'm sure most people assume there isn't one. And I just find it, you know, interesting that apparently he did understand what it was you were doing. Yep.
And that's where I wish, you know, I could go back in time with the knowledge I have now in the wisdom of many, many, many more years. And because, well, if I did that, I don't think I would have done anywhere near as much as I did back then. Like I said, we stumbled and fumbled our way through the first couple of years. And just lucky we both got out of it. But I would love to, you know, had the mindset I have now back then. Yeah. But, you know, kids don't think about anywhere near as much as you do as you get older. And to me, it was just kind of cool, but it's something that I never really thought about. I just thought it was kind of cool that he knew it seemed to me he knew what I was doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is interesting. It just kind of...
And I did realize and notice that up in the sky, you know, like birds,
mm-hmm.
There's something special about birds to them up in the sky, something special about something that can fly.
Right.
I don't know if you can understand the correlation there, but it's something I always thought might have been related, but you know.
Well, and Kat says that too. She says they have some kind of reverence for anything with wings is like associated with Heavenly Father, according to her and what they're telling
cool.
her. So.
No, that's cool. See, what I noticed and realized with Glagg, that's kind of cool. See, I didn't know that. I need to go back and listen to those interviews.
Yeah. Now, here's another one that's going to come up, and this gets talked about regularly with the peculiar eyes that they have. I'm sure that around him and, you know, being out there with campfires going at night and stuff, you saw the reflectivity, the eye shine. Did you ever see any actual examples of eye glow?
No. Nope.
Okay.
I saw his eyes shine bright, though, especially when he'd get close because, you know, most people don't have a buddy that's sitting right next to the fire with you.
Mm-hmm.
And the shine that he'd get when he was close, I mean, but no, I never actually saw it glow. Like I said on a couple other things before, it's not saying that they don't, it's just I never saw it.
Right. Well, it may never have been necessary when you were around them. I mean, me and Rich were talking about that, and the working theory at this point is that the ones that spend a lot of time underground are the ones that have really developed that and need it. And it may just be like a muscle in a human. If you work it, it gets bigger and stronger. And the ones that spend more of the time on surface don't need the eye glow. There's enough background light for them to see in the dark. But if they're going to be underground a lot, traversing big underground subterranean systems, then they would need to have it, and they would have to develop it. So, and the other interesting thing is that the people that seem to be, reporting actual instances of eye glow, it's every time that I've heard it, it's Bigfoot that are in an area where there's karst systems or lots of caves or something.
Yep.
And the local tribes also say, they spend a lot of their time underground. So there might be a direct correlation there, and it could be that Glagg's family just wasn't spending, any time underground other than, sleeping for a few hours in a cave or something, and didn't need to develop it.
The only underground systems around there were, old mines, but in the area, in that area, there wasn't any. It was just like, it wasn't a true cave. It was more, opening in the rocks, and was able to get back in there a ways.
Right. I found some of those.
cave.
I found some of those over in Wisconsin where there were old crumbled rock hills, 100, 150 feet tall, and there's a talus slope on it. And, there's some pretty big openings in some of those piles of boulders that you can squeeze your way into, and there's, they're caves, essentially.
Yep.
What's even weirder is one of them that I found, and I remember it was like a 98-degree day, and I was clambering down the cliff. I climbed down the cliff. I was going down talus slope to slope bottom of it, which is 70 or 80 feet high. And as I started getting down to the bottom of it, it started getting cooler, and I went, where's this cold coming from? This is like late July, and it's like 98 degrees. So I walked around the base of this pile, and I realized what had happened is that during the winter months, and year-round, water was leaking into this big pile of rock, and during the winter it would freeze solid. But it was on the north side of the hill, so even during the summer it never got enough direct light for it to completely melt. And when the wind would come in the right direction down this hill, it would go through the talus slope, and it would blow cold air out the bottom of it. So you could sit down by the river, and it was like having a air conditioner on your back blowing cold air on you. Yeah. So that became our favorite spot to take a rest during our big hike climb routine that we used to do there, where we'd go up and down about 8 cliffs and try and do it in under an hour. And that was the spot at the end of the whole thing where we'd actually take a break and drink a beer or whatever.
Nice.
But I remember going by there one time, and it wasn't a spot that I was normally in. It was way around the other side of it, and there was this funky smell coming out of there. And right away, the alarm bells went off, and I went, I'm pretty sure I know what this is, and I'm getting the hell out of here. Yeah. And I really think there was one that had squoze his way in there and was sleeping there during the day. And again, nice cool spot during the summer. Cool spot. Yeah. So, that would not surprise me at all. Now, another question that we had about him, and this one I also find very, very interesting. You met him in the late fall, and you said at that point he was about 6.5 feet, around between 400 and 500 pounds, maybe. Yeah, so, maybe a little less, but he was just a little bit bigger than me height-wise, but right.
Man,
well, let's say 350, 450, 6.5 feet, maybe.
Yep.
Okay, so 1 year later, after you've been feeding him, taking care of him, helping him, the following late part of the fall, how big was he by then?
Huge.
Huge. Yeah, I kind of knew that, but let's ballpark it a little bit more.
It was like I told you, it seemed like every week that I went up there, he was bigger. He was probably, at the end of the first year, probably right at 7, and another 250.
Good God. So you're estimating by the end of the first year he was between 500-600 pounds and 7 feet tall.
Yeah. Right around there.
Yeah, it's a big boy. And, and the thing is judging by how fast he put on all that weight and height really makes you kind of wonder about how old he was exactly.
Yeah.
Because he had to be in the single digits to be as little as he was and still be growing that fast. I don't think he was 10 or older than that. I think he was more like 6, 7, 8, something like that.
Mercy. And, well, I had always thought he was older, but, you know, I never really knew for sure. But,
right.
Holy crap.
Well, close observations from other people that have had long-term interaction with him, Kat, for example, and she has a pretty clear idea on how fast they grow because she gets to watch them do it, and has on several occasions. And she said the same thing. They're like human size basically when they're still toddlers. They're in their single digits still.
Holy crap! So he was younger than I thought.
Yeah, he was probably like half your age, basically, if not less. Even.
And bigger than me.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Holy cow.
Well, and again, this makes sense. That's why if he had been closer to like 10, 12, 13 years old, by then he might have been big and powerful enough and well-trained enough that he could have just fend for himself and he wouldn't even need you. Okay. But he was, he was at that stage where he could get around good. He could kind of take care of himself. He could hunt some things. He probably knew how to gather a lot of stuff. But he wasn't quite big enough to go and, try and tangle with some of the bigger animals, and maybe just didn't even really, understand how to go about it, or he'd seen it done and didn't figure he was big enough to hack it or something for the most part. And, think of like a kid that's 6, 7 years old, he's got a slingshot. Well, he can probably take down a bunny rabbit, but he ain't going to go deer hunting with it. You know what I'm saying?
True. Man, that's...
Considering how big they get and, the apparent, let's just say that they average out around 9, 10 feet tall, and a human averages out around 5, 6 feet tall. So they're close to double our size. So when is a human 3 feet tall? How old are they?
That's true.
If they're growing yearly at the same rate as we are, in other words, going from 1 to adult by the time you're 19 or 20, would mean that when he was human size, he's going to be like, the same age as a human that's like 3 feet tall when they're that size.
So you know what that means? Holy cow! I made tougher than all get out. It was good that you taught him how to defend himself, although he probably didn't have enough common sense to maybe regulate what he was doing with it until he got to be a little bit older. Hopefully that didn't cause any major problems along the line anywhere, but at least not ones you're aware of. Yeah. No. Like I said, well, I always wanted him to be able to get back into his society, if you could call it that. And that's what I always hoped. But, yeah, I didn't want him to, look at what was going on with me. I didn't want him to ever go through what I was going through. I wanted him to be able to take care of himself no matter what come along.
That must have been really tough for you, too, because even if you did your for those of us that are older, I'm just going to use the reference, born free thing with them. And, get them to go back to being out in the wild again and maybe being accepted by another Bigfoot troop or something. How do you know that he's going to get accepted by a good troop? He could be stuck in the same kind of situation you were in with your family where some troop takes him in. They only like halfway put up with them. The old ones that are older than him but not like the alpha or something, pick on them when the other ones aren't around, or, you just don't, and that kind of stuff would be running through my head. If I go to all the trouble of actually helping this poor little guy find himself another troop to live with, how can I assure that it's not going to turn into a total crapshoot like it is with, my home situation?
Yeah, and that's the reason why I wanted to teach him to be the toughest SOB in the valley. So, any of them that might try picking on him would find that was a bad idea.
Right on. And lastly, I know this is one thing that you and me already mentioned, but a couple of people brought it up in the questions, and that was about, did you get pictures of Glagg? Let me field part of that. You're about the same age as me, you're a little bit younger. Back then, there wasn't any electronic anything, except for a stereo, okay? There weren't any electronic phones or video cameras or any of that stuff. You couldn't buy it. If you wanted a regular camera that you had to put film in, you could get that. There weren't even disposable cameras yet. And kids like me and Kevin that spent a lot of time running around the woods really weren't carrying cameras taking pictures. That was kind of a different mindset than what we were into.
Yeah. And, kids have MP3 players the size of a postage stamp that carry 10,000 songs. For me to carry music with me, it required a Walkman that the rich kids had, not us poor kids, that was big and bulky and on a motorcycle. No. No, I didn't have my first Walkman that played a cassette tape, which most kids don't even have any idea what a cassette tape is.
Yeah. And that came out after you had parted ways with Glagg. So
yes.
There you go, guys. That tech just wasn't there at the time. And it was the same thing when I was, having my experiences, my first early ones in the 70s. We had 8mm video camera that we could film with, and we had like one of the old-fashioned Polaroids, and that was it for the whole family. That's all we had. And, when we went out hunting and stuff, we didn't carry cameras with us. That wasn't important.
Nope.
If we killed some really big animal that we wanted to get a picture of it or something, we could always take a picture afterwards. Didn't have to have a camera with you to do that.
When you're back at the house and your animal is in the back of the truck, that's when you take a picture of it.
Yeah, or when you got it hanging, out in the yard looking all impressive and stuff, that's when you take your picture, standing next to it, see, here's how big it is.
Yep.
So just for practical purposes, for those that are too young to have been around for that, that sort of thing just wasn't done unless you were like some sort of a team that was doing, like research on wild animals for National Geographic or something. In general, you were not carrying cameras and stuff around with you when you were in the woods. That was something that, photographers and people like that did, but it wasn't common for just everybody to be carrying a camera around with them. It didn't happen, especially kids.
A good camera at the time, there weren't the smaller little, even the 35mm film cameras. They were a big, bulky thing back then. It wasn't until the 90s that they started getting to where they were able to fit like in a shirt pocket. It wasn't.
Well, as far as that goes, we don't even have to go back that far. The first video camera that I got that you could, that used videotapes, looked like a TV camera. You had to put it on your shoulder, and the thing was $1,600. And it had great sound and great video quality, but I mean, my God, who has one of those lying around? Who's going to lug that through the woods with them?
Who's going to carry something that weighs 60 pounds and costs $2,000 that and going to carry it on your back on a dirt bike? No. And just different era.
At that point, that technology didn't even exist. That wasn't until like the 90s. Late 80s or into the 90s. Before that, it didn't even exist, so it wasn't even an option.
They had 8mm cameras, but they were like, the stuff that they use to film movies with nowadays. It was a smaller version of that, but it was like a reel-to-reel camera. That
that was the 8mm that we had. It literally had the little reels on it that you'd have to play it back on. And just like the PG film, you had to be super careful to not expose it when you're putting it in and taking it out again, or you'd ruin it. And, it just wasn't anything like what we've got to deal with now. It was super iffy, touchy. And, again, hats off to the PG guys. Got to give Roger credit for that, for not screwing up the film and actually, getting a good quality recording of it, even though it was shaky and wobbly and he was running and falling all over the place.
Well, they didn't have image stabilization and digital anything. The shaky and the grainy film, for what he had, the technology that they had, that film is amazing.
Well, yeah.
For the technology of the day.
Yeah, and now the upgraded version where they actually gave good old Bill Munn the opportunity to go in there, take the original film and photograph it frame by frame and stabilize it and go through the whole thing. And the version that they've got out now, folks, that Bill Munn did, is a billion times better than the original version. That original one, when it was playing in the theaters, you got to see a few seconds of Patty stabilized walking along, and the rest of it was all camera jumping all over the place, frame jumping all over the place, couldn't make out anything.
He has it recorded when he fell.
Yeah, I know.
He just about smashed that camera on the rocks when he fell.
Well, considering he got thrown off his horse right when they came around the corner, he's lucky he even pulled the camera out and got any footage. It's amazing.
Yep.
Well, I think we covered all the viewer questions and stuff, so we'll thank you all for tuning in, listening, and kind of put this one to bed. And we'll be back with episode 4.
Any more questions, leave them in the comments, and we can do this again after another episode.
Yep, anything that comes to mind that we haven't already answered, and we won't, and I'm sure we'll probably answer in upcoming episodes, but don't guarantee that that's going to happen, because we could always forget something, and I could forget to ask him, or he could forget that it's important and mention it. So anything that comes to mind that you guys want to know about, go ahead and ask the question. You know, he doesn't know everything, but he can tell you what he observed from watching Glagg for 5 years.
I'll tell you any questions you got that I can answer.
Yeah, again, thanks a lot for coming on the show again, man. I'm sure everybody's going to just love hearing about the second part of the Glagg saga, and looking forward to having you come back to tell us the whole rest of the story and get all that out here, and hopefully we'll be able to get that polished off before Christmas time at least. You still got to tell me about the crabby Sasquatches over on the other side of the valley too. That's a whole other can of worms that we got to talk about.
Well, that can be an episode by itself, is because, you know, there's quite a few trips up there that we were taking. You know, after I figured out they were there, I took buddies up there and, you know, made sure you don't stop and you just hammer down. But when they hear us coming, you're going to start getting big rock rain coming after you.
Oh, my God. Seriously, they're that bad? As soon as they start hearing the noise coming, they started raining the boulders at you.
Yep. They did not like the sound of them big, huge two strokes ripping down through the valley.
Oh, man. Oh, God. You guys are so lucky.
And I like I said, fumbling my way through it. You know how could not. You know how lucky we were that there wasn't one of us get plugged off of there.
They must not have been trying very hard. They must have started thinking it was a game after a while. Oh, look, they're coming by, so we can throw some boulders toward them again.
Well, I wasn't. I never took it as a game, and I fifth gear hammered down through that mountain road, down through that area.
Well, think about that first one you saw that was chasing that elk, how he flicked that boulder.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to think about that.
Yeah, well, you should have been before you were up there playing, let's go run through enemy territory and see if we get hit by a boulder on your friggin' motorcycle, dude.
See, that's the thing, is I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about scaring the crap out of my friends or the people that you went with. Is all I was wanting to do is make them have a brown stain on their motorcycle seat.
Didn't they ever wonder where these boulders were coming from when this is happening?
Well, they more times than I can count, it was, okay, who's hiding up there in the trees throwing rocks at us? Like, you idiot. I told you. There's a bunch of Bigfoot up there that don't like the sound of your motorcycle. And they're chucking rocks at us. And you don't want to stop. And they want, they wanted to go back.
They'll hit you for sure.
Yep. They wanted to go back and kick the ass of whoever's throwing rocks at us. And it's like, you're stupid. That's exactly what I told you it is. Well, open the eyes of more than one stupid idiot, and then the guys that are still in denial about it because they're not real.
No.
Well, then what just rained rocks down on us as we was ripping through there?
Boulder grizzlies. They throw rocks at you.
Yeah.
They throw boulders at you. Boulder grizzlies. That's what did it.
Yep. BG.
Yeah, I same thing when Sonny was telling me about having a log thrown at her. Oh, and it hit me in the shoulder too. Yeah, it hurt her really good too. She didn't want to talk about it. No, and that wasn't enough of a hint to make you go away. You wanted to come back again the next day. Good God.
Well, I was saying when I commented about her before the show started, and I was taking people up doing the same exact thing, just on a motorcycle with rocks.
Let's go play chicken with the crabby Sasquatch over here. No, let's not do that. Kids are crazy. All right. Well, we're going to go here before everybody gets so freaked out that they can't sleep. And thanks again for coming on the show, and we'll have you on again soon. And for all the listeners out there, thanks for tuning in. Make sure to tune back for the next show, and there will be more installments of the Glagg saga. And there will also be other intervening shows We have some really cool ones coming up here. So we're going to be splitting it up and staggering them. But in the meantime, everybody be kind to everybody else. Try and always pay it forward. And whatever you do, God help you, please do not hug the Wookiee. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.